welcome everyone to today's Astrology Exchange with Monte, Farber, and William Stickevers. They're going to be discussing what's really going on from an astrological perspective. Thank you for joining us live today. If you're here, that means you're a GTA or CAG member with William on William's email list or part of Monte's wonderful community. So thanks again for joining us. And William and Monte, you can take it away.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to talk about a number of subjects. I think we should just focus on what's been going on for the past few days with this Mercury retrograde in full gear. And now we're between the most recent blood supermoon total lunar eclipse and the upcoming annular solar eclipse, which Monte and I are calling the gray rhino eclipse, which will be happening in a few days from now. So we're in a very volatile, liminal, uncertain place, and everything is just going haywire. In many people's lives, you see this in the news, you see this in the headlines, and it's just going to intensify a lot more. So, Monte, what do you want to say about this as well?
Well, I just put up where the planets are right now, and I see that the moon and Uranus are pretty much conjunct today, 5 degrees away. So we're going to be wild and crazy today, William. Well, I happen to, I love being a member of your groups, and you've been hitting it out of the park. And you were talking about the gray rhino, which is like the black swan, except the 800-pound black swan in the room that everybody's ignoring. And so I was hoping we were going to talk about all the things that are obviously going to happen that nobody wants to really talk about.
Well, yeah, that's what basically our show's about. We're going to talk about things that's happening both astrologically and in the real world that 99% of astrologers don't want to talk about.
Or anybody.
Or anybody for that matter. Well, it's gotten, you're right. The collective cognitive dissonance is reaching an apex, right?
Yeah,
where
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Well, I had a client today, and they were talking about selling their house. And I said to them, as you've been saying all along, what's going to happen is when the edict preventing evictions happens, and this to me is the gray rhino that everybody can agree on. When the evictions start happening and people can't pay their rent because they've been out of work and they're no longer getting the extra unemployment and all that other stuff.
And the moratoriums are lifted.
That's what I meant. Yes.
Right.
So, and a lot of those, like you said, a lot of those jobs are not coming back. So there's going to be a lot of unemployed people who cannot afford their rent. And so all of a sudden they're going to be evicted. When I think you said Biden just signed something extending that.
Yeah, they were supposed to lift it in June 1st. So that did not happen. I believe it'll be lifted in October. So right. September, October. I think they're going to finalize that in the next few weeks. And
why do crashes always happen in October? I don't understand. I remember '87, there was a gigantic crash in the market in October. October is like the witching month for the stock market or for the economy of the United States.
Right. Historically, crashes happen in March and October. And so we look at some of the biggest crashes in history. It happened in March. And we did have one of the biggest, probably the biggest crash in history happen last year during the COVID outbreak between March 17th and March 24th. Much bigger than the 2008 crash or the 1929 crash. Much bigger, right? Yeah. So when people say, hey, my annuity, it's set for life, I never have to worry about it. That's not the truth, right? A lot of people who make those statements are just quoting their financial advisor who actually gets kickbacks and incentives, right, from the financial industry to make statements like that to their clients when the reality is very different.
Like your doctor gets money from drug companies.
Right. They get kickbacks.
I'm not saying yours, but a lot of doctors. I'm saying a lot of doctors get money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if your doctor's giving you a sample, he didn't materialize that out of the air like, some Shri or a Bindu or somebody. He was given that by a salesperson. Oh my God, the gray rhino, there it is.
The gray rhino. I wanted to show that to everybody who could see that with the eclipse and the gray rhino, which is a book. And we'll talk about that in a minute, but go ahead. Finish.
No, I was just going to say that's another gray rhino. There's all these gray rhinos. So the housing market is one thing. If you're going to sell now, because there'll be a lot of inventory when all these people are evicted, and that gray rhino is pregnant because it gives birth to a lot of other little gray rhinos, like people who've been evicted and have no place to live and are not too happy about it. So
right.
So, and these are not things that are political, a political party, you know, and you don't have to be an astrologer to predict them. It's just human nature.
Right. And so when you have these type of scenarios where like a gray rhino is technically a highly probable, high impact, yet neglected threat, meaning it's being marginalized, overlooked, played down, right? It's like the 800-pound gorilla or 2,000-pound elephant in the living room, right? So it's a highly improbable, or, you know, so like where a black swan would be highly improbable and unforeseeable event that occurs, right?
Yes.
A gray swan is like the next notch. It's much more something we can predict. A gray rhino is predictable, where a black swan, unless you're an advanced world-class mundane astrologer using very sophisticated black box, what I would call type of technology, where you're using, you know, first level artificial intelligence, looking at all the different secular trends and how they intersect with all the planetary alignments. It's very hard to predict a black swan, other than being able to only say, I'm seeing a black swan coming between now and 2023. We don't know what it is, but we know. But a gray rhino, right, is something you can see. The evidence is all over the place. It's not a random surprise, but occurs after a series of persistent indications, trends, warnings, visible evidence right in the mainstream news, right, hidden in plain sight. And then all it just takes is a nice, juicy solar eclipse with other planetary alignments occurring at the same time, hint, hint, in June, right, this year, for it all to explode.
Yeah, 100%. And getting back to the homeowner type of thing, if you want to understand the difference, the black swan event is your neighbor's bathtub overflowing and you're just like sitting there and your ceiling collapses. And the gray rhino event is that crack in your wall that you fixed 18 times that one day just like falls apart because it can't be fixed anymore. That's the difference between a gray rhino and a black swan from a homeowner perspective.
Right. Absolutely. So it's really, you know, the ignorance of leadership, ignorance in leadership.
Yes.
It's actually in gross negligence in leadership, where the leaders refuse to perceive the warning signals.
Well, you know, in Gulliver's Travels, which is a really amazing book, one of the places he visits, the rulers had what are called flappers, and their job was to flap the ruler's ears if there was something that he should listen to. And unfortunately, no matter who's in charge, they can only do so much, and they can only listen to so much, and they can only process so much.
Right.
And you know, all the people who are okay boomers, we've had okay boomers, and we have an okay boomer now as leaders, and they can process less than a younger person can. So there's negligence, and then there's ignorance in that they're ignoring stuff.
Or what we've been calling willful ignorance.
Well, that's true. And what you said before, cognitive dissonance, where no matter how many times you explain it to them in simple terms, they just don't want to admit that the gray rhino is crashing through the bedroom wall.
Right. And so like when you look at the gray rhino, which is okay, so a gray rhino generally happens when you see these type of astrological events, generally that are building up over a period of time. Like with eclipses, right? We know that events begin to occur in the days around an eclipse, right? Where, you know, generally around 10 days prior to the eclipse. So if you just go back to the total lunar eclipse blood moon, right? It was actually a super moon. It was a blood moon. It was a total lunar eclipse all at the same time. You take that, and the period between a total lunar eclipse and an annular solar eclipse that follows it is always 14.5 or 15 days. So you take that time orb, right? And events taking place within that 15-day period leading up to the eclipse generally are indicative of an emerging gray rhino type of event where affairs take a turn, where affairs that are unfolding take a turn that are not anticipated and or often dramatic and have high impact in a most dramatic way to our personal lives, to the world, etc.
Right. So, and the reversals, when you think about what is going on in the news, there is a lot of uncovering of formerly hidden things. And I don't know if that's because Mars has been opposite to Pluto. In my experience with my clients, I have often found that, actually, with the exception of Mars, a lot of transits to Pluto happen later, like after it's exact.
Right. Right.
So
it's like cancer. Like, when did you get the cancer? The time it was diagnosed by a doctor, right? By the oncologist, or what? Or when did you get the cancer? When Pluto was exact to your sun, and then 7 months later, you find you have a tumor somewhere, and they think it's benign, but then you get other tests, and you find that this is a very aggressive form of cancer. Like, when did the event happen? And it's like Pluto, right? Generally, when Pluto's exact, it seems like nothing is happening, but everything is happening.
Yeah,
right?
And as somebody with Pluto on my ascendant, I can tell you that's true. No, that's very interesting to me, because I've never heard another astrologer talk about the delayed quality to Pluto transits.
Well, just think about it. What's worse, the nuclear strike or the radiation that follows, the fallout?
Right. Well, obviously the fallout, because the fallout goes for a much wider area.
And lasts what, about a couple thousand years, I've heard.
Right. And that brings me to the biggest pandemic going on in the world, which has been going on since I was a kid. And they used to tell us to go under your desk to hide from a nuclear bomb, which is basically put your head between your legs and kiss your ass goodbye.
Right.
But I mean, the pandemic that's really, really going on now, and that, talk about a gray rhino, is the fear pandemic. They've got everybody afraid, so that when you walk up to someone and you're close to them, you're afraid of them. That's just one aspect of the fear pandemic that's going on. I mean, thank God we you have spirituality. You and I have, and our families have spirituality, because it works, and have some kind of grounding, or else we'd feel. I don't blame people for being really afraid and doing all kinds of things to try and be less afraid.
Yeah, I think the real issue is the things they should be really concerned about, they have no clue about, and the things they are so up in arms about or upset about are really phantoms.
Yeah, no, it's total distraction. Like, you're in Las Vegas. All the magicians, that's what they do. They know how to distract you so they can do what they got to do. I work with Penn and Teller. I was sitting right next to them at lunch, and they used to do tricks. We used to hang out at lunch on their movie. You could sit right next to them and you couldn't tell what they were doing, because they knew exactly how to distract you. That's what's going on. Talk about the gray rhino that you have also been talking about for a decade at least, is the financial situation at this point in history.
Right. Well, look at the rate of inflation. Isn't that the gray rhino? Because there are people still in denial about inflation. They don't see the prices increasing. We're seeing like unprecedented levels of inflation that are blowing out even the numbers from 1979, when we had 21% inflation, right? If you look at what's happening to housing prices, look at construction prices, look at the fact that we can't get enough chips for computers right now. We have these massive, what do they call it, chain disruptions in the supply chain.
Yeah, supply chain. Well, I have it seems like we're staying on homes, which is good. Fourth house, homes, moon conjunct Uranus. But I have a land across the street from me. Someone bought it. Nice people. We're waiting for them to build. They can't build. Why? There's no crews out here because so many people moved out and they're doing modifications. But more than that, you can't afford the commodities. You can't afford the plywood, the 2x4s. Everything's tripled.
It's tripling, and so this isn't hit home yet. So that's why when I look at this eclipse, right, in Gemini, 19 degrees of Gemini, I also noticed that the Saturn-Uranus alignment is within a degree. You could see it's really very prominent.
Yeah, and that's part deux. That's the second square.
Yeah, that's the second square, which is going to be far more powerful than the first one, and that's why I think a lot of this is all going to catch up with the broader markets. And I think that the consumption levels are going to start like dropping right? So like a lot of people have been just taking their $3,600 or whatever they're getting from the government and going out and spending it right on right?
crypto.
That's another story, right? Yeah, we'll get to that in a moment. But
yeah,
so you're seeing like this sudden level of consumption coming back because all the restrictions are lifted and people aren't respond. People are not wearing masks now. Like they the government's saying you should be wearing 2 masks, and then on top of that, the fact that the Fauci emails, right, the declassification.
Well, that's what I was thinking when you were talking before about stuff happening in the penumbral period between the eclipses.
Mm-hmm. So what people have to remember is that if something happens between the blood moon eclipse, right, the total lunar eclipse, and this upcoming solar eclipse, this annular solar eclipse on the 10th, right, which will be in effect all the way till the 11th. Anything that we're hearing about, like the sudden reversals in policy decisions, this Fauci revelations from his emails that are, more are going to be coming. We're going to see all of these disturbing revelations about the vaccine, about all these things are likely to come to a head and in a very explosive way, in a way that, definitely emulates that high impact event. So we're going to not just one, but multiple impact events.
Well, yes, and once again, it's the fear tsunami, the fear pandemic. People are afraid. Oh my God, he didn't do the right thing. So and so didn't do the right thing.
Right.
My friend Bill Siegel wrote a book called The Control Factor, and in it he talked about how people feel like if this one thing would only happen, then everything would be great. Because it makes you feel
would be great, right?
Yeah, it makes you feel. I mean, the classic example is like everybody thought, well, if we get Trump out, everything's going to be great. Okay, you got him out. So is everything great? Maybe for you it's great. For a lot of people it is. But like I said, when they lift that eviction notice,
so that the housing bubble is going to be much bigger than it was in 2006 and 7. It's growing exponentially, and we know there's a series of events that are going to happen between now and between the 2nd and 3rd Saturn-Uranus alignment.
December 21st.
Right. So it's going to be happening that are going to be explosive, high impactful, and disruptive in nature. Right. So we're going to see that. And also, like, just, it was interesting. What just came out today is a virologist who told Fauci the SARS COVID-2 is potentially engineered, right? So in other words, we're seeing more and more evidence every day about that. We're looking at an engineered virus, right? That Fauci and high-level government officials were aware of, but were covering up in these emails. So this is not to play down that there was no reason to be concerned, but it's really clear now that the California virologist who told Fauci that COVID-19 it was potentially engineered and inconsistent with expectations from evolutionary theory, right?
Right.
So all of this is coming out, and it's in emails that have been declassified or going through various legal channels here, and I believe that this is going to be a much more explosive story along with some of these other things that we're seeing. And I think we're seeing this along with what's happening. This whole COVID thing, by the way, is creating this housing bubble, which is going to absolutely devastate the markets and the economy in the coming months ahead.
Yeah, it's complete. It's unforeseen consequences or blowback, whatever you want to call it. Oh my God. But at the same time, and we've often said this, a lot of people did very well during the Depression. If forewarned is forearmed, and if you can, right. That's what we try and do here on these conversations. There's also a doctor named David McCullough whose credentials are unimpeachable. Mm-hmm. He's a professor of medicine in Texas at A&M University, and he is also saying, he vaccinated his patients for a while, but now he won't do it because he just doesn't. That's him. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I'm just saying the reversals that are indicated by an eclipse are happening. It's not our imagination or wishful thinking on the part of astrologers. Eclipses are legendary for this kind of stuff.
Right. So we're going to definitely see some very fiery, explosive developments. Somebody who's at very high end of the power structure is going to make a revelation, or some information is going to come out unexpectedly that is connected with, you know, the Chinese lab, right? That's connected to you know, the Wuhan lab, along with the COVID-19, where it was likely now it was a bioweapon, maybe a low-grade bioweapon that got out that was being military, you know, a SARS virus, weaponized, yeah, a SARS virus that was being weaponized, right, for specific applications to people with a certain genome type or a certain pre-existing conditions.
Right. Well, especially old people,
older people who were whose BMI is like 30 plus. Right.
I beg your pardon. No, I'm only
well, I'm just saying that's what happens, right? The BMI levels increase.
That's body mass index. It's not about BMI, the licensing company.
Right. So the body mass index increases naturally some between the ages of 55 and 80 tremendously, because metabolism slows down. It doesn't have to stay. It doesn't have to be that way, right? But it does happen if you don't do, if you allow, if you don't have any type of strategy in terms of your health, in terms of your diet, health habits, your BMI will, and it seems COVID, right, targets that very well.
Oh yeah. As a matter of fact, this is another uncontrovertible, and that's been studied and proven, and not many things about it has, that the greatest indication of whether you'd be hospitalized with COVID was whether you were obese.
Exactly. So I was just thinking about, like, what were they really thinking about? Well, let's target just obese populations. Well, that's most of the Western world. That's most of, especially the United States, which has the highest BMI index of all nations combined.
We're
right?
number one.
We're number one. We're number. Finally, we're number one in something, right? We used to be number one, folks. We used to be number one in everything.
Manufacturing.
Everything. And now we're not even number one except in the BMI index list here. So what does that tell you, right? Have we had, like, you know, 30 years of phenomenal leadership going on? I don't think so, regardless of what your political affiliation is. That's the other wake-up call.
Yes.
We're going to see. And
that's why we're running you for president, William.
Nah, no, thank you.
Yeah, really. No,
I'm not partisan enough. I couldn't play the partisan game, because I'm about solutions, not about playing the blame game and pointing fingers, right? And that's part of that's really what goes on. But I'm going to see, look, and the other thing about the Great Rhino is we're talking about, like, you know, the possibility we're going to see riots, right?
Well, yes, that's what I was trying to say about when people with children are evicted, they are not going to be happy people. Mm-hmm. And desperate people do desperate things. But, you know, and one of the gray rhinos that was unleashed, but I have a feeling they're going to put it back in its pen, is someone posted about this in the chat here in our conversation, the capital gains tax being retroactive and being increased, because everybody out where I live, all these stock people who invest and make their money by playing that game, the Wall Street game, they are not going to like having their short-term earnings taxed like that.
That's right. So that's the other, right? So on top of inflation, the fact that they're going to have punitive regulations and punitive taxes that are now soon to be rolled out into policy, into law, is going to hit a lot of people, especially the people who voted for the current regime. I call it the regime in place here. Yeah. And so that's the other great rhino. So we're going to see a lot of disruptive events this month, and it just, you know, it's just getting started. I don't even think it's begun really. I mean, I just look at, you know, if you just go to Drudge Report or one of those types of websites, you just see, you know, like, you're just seeing like the worst election deception of all time, right? Security chief warning of violence in Israel. This is just getting started. We're not even close to we're in the zone, right? 600 plus quakes shake California, Mexican border.
Really?
Yeah. So this is, again, like the Great Rhino. We've known this is coming, right? We can see, we're seeing now they're going to do they're giving a global 15% global tax on all corporations around the world.
Who's going to levy that tax? Who's going to get the money?
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, no one's asking that. And yet the reason that can happen is because Biden was behind it. Right. And now the G7 is doing this historic deal on this global tax. Right. This global tax sounds like a one world, right? One world, one order, one financial system world that we're moving towards. So I think that's something they needed to put in place before they did the reset, which has been postponed, by the way.
Right.
Till next year. So they had to get Trump out of the way for that to happen. There's no way Trump would have agreed with the G7 nations to do this historic global tax when his goal was to reduce taxes, right? He lowered corporate taxes down to 21%.
Something like that, yeah.
Right. So, and he did this massive. Now they're reversing all of that and then going to impose very powerful punitive taxes for their, and ultimately where that money is going to go is the big question.
Wow. And here I am being happy. I just got my window air conditioners installed today. and the world's going to hell in a handcart. I mean, there must be stuff we can do about it.
Well, there is stuff. I mean, just the fact that, look, the plan of action at this point is to do okay, let's talk about the 60s. So it was the social activism that really game changed the culture and changed the narrative and changed the politics.
Yes. Right? We stopped the war.
We stopped the war, and it was other things, right? You had women's rights, you had civil rights, you had all of these, right? Phenomenal creative developments. You had the beginning of Earth Day and the ecological awareness movement and all these things. Well, we need to go back to that model again. So social activism is going to be really key. And so that, but you had, what was it? You had a small minority of baby boomers coming of age, right? Entering adulthood, entering psychological adulthood. And they were the ones that took the mantle of this, right? So you had a very small, it wasn't like 99% of the baby boomers were doing that. It was somewhere about 19-20%. That was a very small percentage of the population were those who were going to Haight-Ashbury, going out and, sort of playing that type of countercultural role. So I really...
No, I was just going to say, Catherine's asking a great question. What do you do when the media is hiding all of the protests and activism today?
Right.
I don't know what to say to that, because when we were, we were talking about the Sam cycle or the Soros cycle of the eclipses, and this eclipse relates to the one in 1967, which was the summer of love.
Mm-hmm.
If you had told someone that you believed what you were seeing in the newspaper or the mainstream media, they would think you were the biggest asshole. They wouldn't even pass you the joint. You know what I'm saying?
Really?
So, yeah, because we knew we were on our own, but that was the cool thing, was to be an individualized person and to be your authentic self. That was the goal. So all these people who are, listen to CNN all day or listen to Fox TV, or try and get their stuff without digging and going into and finding, alternative websites like, natural health news and health impact news. And you know what it is? It's usually, if you're not into your health, you won't be into really looking in, because if you just go by the mainstream stuff, you're screwed.
Well, that's right. So the mainstream media has really clamped down and is actually taking over the internet. So back 7, 8, even just, before Trump came to power, it was, he did all of his promotions on YouTube. He wasn't getting any mainstream traction, right? So what was interesting is the media has really clamped down. Now YouTube is completely run by the powers that be. Google is now part of the mainstream, right?
Yeah,
so
they stopped Naomi Wolf. Naomi Wolf is a feminist author. She's very left of center. They deplatformed her because she's not into vaccination or whatever you want to call them, the jab. I mean, everybody yells at me if I call them vaccinations or whatever.
Right. And if you look at what happened, I mean, talking about gray rhinos, and if you use the Soros cycle and you go back to 1967, what was happening Well, there was a number of things happening. One of the big things that happened, and we're seeing it sort of like politically play out like this power struggle in Israel, was the start of the 6-Day War, right?
Yes.
In Israel, right? Where you had like, if I remember, it was like all of these countries, right? A number of these countries decided, right? Syria, Egypt, and every Arab country hit Israel, right? Simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
All at the same time, right? It was quite it was, and then we had the West Bank and East Jerusalem with Jordan, right? So, and then you had this oil embargo, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, and then you also, I believe it was also around the time USS Liberty, right? Was
when
sunk,
the United
right?
States was
Right.
ship was sunk.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's another thing. And then it was a blockade of the Suez Canal and all of that stuff. Right. So yeah, you know, Egypt puts this blockades the Suez Canal, and if that happened today, man, whew, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
would see oil prices just skyrocket.
Well,
So,
look what happened with that ship that blocked the Suez Canal by accident, supposedly. I mean, that disrupted trade incredibly.
right, right. So that was like a one-off event, or was that a
Oh,
prelude to what's coming? We don't know.
right.
But you know, it's clear to me that yeah, so there was like a lot of revolution, there was a lot of disruptive geopolitical events, right? And then we had, you know, on a domestic level, and especially in Western Europe and the United States, and even other parts of Asia, you had this counterculture movement really, you know, coming. I mean, the Summer of Love was sort of the moment when you knew the counterculture was here. It was not going away.
Right. No, it's true. Well, I hope that some of the good qualities, you know, because if you mix that kind of social activism with the technology, all kinds of amazing things. Like one of the things I've gotten a lot from your crypto group, which I advise everybody to join, is the fact that when you're investing in a coin, it's not a coin, it's a project. It's something that's going on to solve a problem. And a lot of the social activism has gone into that, you know, because it's like Cardano, they're actually trying to help poor countries, and they're trying to do, you know, make it so that everybody doesn't have to spend $1 zillion on gas fees with the Ether 20 coins and stuff. They're trying. So a lot of the social activism is going on beneath the surface. It's not getting covered. What's getting covered is, oh my God, dog coin went up and down, and
dog coin.
Well, that's what you call it.
I call it dog coin. Yeah, Dogecoin for those folks who are not initiated yet into crypto.
Well, I mean, but the thing is, it got so many people into crypto, that thing, because now everybody joined Robinhood, right?
Right. Well, now it's on Coinbase. Did you know that?
Dogecoin? No.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, come on. Really?
I know. I mean, you know, a lot of people who are having doubts about the Coinbase at this moment because they're allowing Dogecoin to be listed. Right.
Well, that's not right.
Yeah, Coinbase Pro, right? It's on Coinbase Pro. So look, you know, it's yeah, so the counterculture revolution, if you want to call it that, for lack of a better term at the moment, this sort of neo libertarian counterculture movement. It's certainly counter to the establishment controlled media, establishment controlled narrative in Washington culture. There's no doubt that the crypto people, if you're in crypto, you are sticking it to the man in a much more powerful way than you ever could hanging out at Haight-Ashbury, you know, getting stoned with flower power. Right. So, you know, I tell people, if you really want to do something, put a majority of your cash into hard assets like Bitcoin and things like that, and you're actually much more disruptive to their plans of implementing a global new world order, which they are rapidly rolling out fast, hidden in plain sight by the mainstream media. And that's what this Gray Rhino, we're going to have another Gray Rhino event where we're going to, you know, I don't know what's going to happen. It's very hard to tell because with eclipses, they have a breakdown and breakout moment at the same time. So things will be breaking down and other things will be breaking through or breaking out, right, in a good, constructive way simultaneously.
Well, you know, it's funny because the chart that you had up for the eclipse is actually a good chart for a crypto coin, because I've watched you gave a talk about what look for when you're examining a good crypto coin.
Right.
And this chart would actually be good for it. So perhaps the eclipse is going to be good for crypto.
Yeah, I think it will be good for crypto. And we could also see like the emergence of a decentralized exchange where you don't have to be a super tech nerd and to actually much more like a Coinbase version, right? A much more intuitive, easy to use, GUI version of a decentralized exchange where you don't need, it won't be based in San Francisco. It won't need to go public. It will never go public because it's nowhere and everywhere, just like Bitcoin is nowhere and everywhere.
That's really interesting. Wow. That's kind of mind blowing when you think about it. Well, that's why it's so hard for exchanges to open up in New York State, because New York State has all the Wall Street people who do not want people to be able to buy stuff without using a broker.
Well, that's all. They can't stop that. I mean, if you live in New York, there's all different ways you can get around that easily.
No, for sure. Now,
and people are doing it, right? People are doing it. They're moving, right? So the whole Wall Street central finance system is in trouble. This is sort of like 2011 if you are Blockbuster Video.
Uh-oh.
Think about it. So Wall Street is Blockbuster Video in 2011. Everyone had a Blockbuster account.
Oh, no.
Half of the Blockbuster users had a Netflix account. What happened by 2015?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite South Park episodes is where his father buys a Blockbuster for $10,000.
Right, when the stock peaked, right?
Right, and then there's ghosts walking around the Blockbuster.
Exactly, and this is they don't know it yet, but they are on the verge of extinction. They are on the verge of an existential threat. Like the existential threat is going to become real, and I believe that starts this month with this eclipse.
Well, who's going to buy the $80 million houses out here?
Well, that's the issue, right? I mean, so the prices are going to go from 80 million to 100 million to 120 million between now and till the time the market blows between now and December. And that's why everybody, if you've got a shack to sell that you only paid 30,000 on, which now you could get 800,000 to 1.2 million, depending on where you live, sell it now. And if you can't sell it in 3 days, fire your broker. If you can't, get a lawyer to suspend the broker and then get a new broker. Because there's some people here from Long Island say, William, it's been months. I have this great place in the Hamptons. I can't sell it because my...
Oh, that's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'm hearing this and just get your lawyer on the phone, suspend the broker contract, get a new broker in, do whatever you got to do. Because if you don't have a bidding war, right? And you could have a shack and have a bidding war in 2 hours. You could have a shack in the middle of Queens.
Out here, right? Yeah.
And if you don't have a bidding war in 2 hours, you have the wrong broker and you're doing something really wrong.
Right. And especially with the price, like we were talking, with the price of building materials, existing housing is at a premium, because to have to build something on raw land is just out of sight right now.
Right. And so important to do it now because it ain't going to last much longer. How much longer is anyone's guess, but the astrology is saying between now and December, this market's going to peak. And remember, everyone listening out there, remember, when did the not the dot-com bubble, let's go forward a bit to the 2008 crisis. So we know that the stock market, the Lehman crisis due to the mortgage-backed security meltdown occurred starting in September. But when did the home prices peak and then people start walking out of their homes? That was in the summer of 2006. So home prices peaked and then people started working out of their homes in January of 2007. So it took a while before it hit the markets.
Right. I just want to point out that we are not brokers. We are not financial advisors. All our free readings come with money back guarantees.
That's right. So yeah, this is not financial advice, but if you're on the thinking of selling and you're thinking of like, I'm a baby boomer, I want to move to Florida, this Long Island lifestyle is killing me, inflation's taking off. We have the highest electrical prices. You have the highest electrical prices, one of the second highest taxes in the world. You have like the highest of everything. If you compare it to Hong Kong,
we're number one. I'm telling you.
Long Island is number one. Then it's time to sell. Then you may want to sell.
but we're not going to sell because we love it here. But that's just us, and we built. This is the house Amy's lived in since she's 16, so we're not gonna sell. Plus, I love this place.
Right. Well, for a lot of people who have an unsustainable lifestyle, which I see in Long Island, right, it's totally unsustainable. Maybe it's time to push that button.
Well, yeah, for sure. And one thing is that you can step off this lifeboat into the rental lifeboat. If you sell now or towards the end of this cycle, then there'll be rental. Right now, people are telling me there's not even a place to rent on Long Island.
That's right. And rental prices, now it's very different. Back in 2007, 2008, just before the dot-com bubble, rental prices were dropping. Home prices were still accelerating. Now rental prices are exceeding, are blowing past, in other words, in terms of percentage, the home prices.
Yeah, which is nuts. But haven't they said that millennials do not want to own, they want to rent?
Well, they want to rent, but they can't even afford the rent. So they're moving back. They're still staying in the basement. You have people with doctoral and master degrees, right, living in their parents' basement, and they're like pushing 40 now.
Wow.
I mean, it's not hard. Every millennial, but it's like somewhere between 33 and 39%. That's a good chunk.
That's a huge chunk. Well, I can't talk because I live with Amy's mother, and we all live with Amy's mother. I mean, she lived with us, we lived with her, and we loved it. So not all those situations are bad. But I see what you're saying. But I've heard that they're even designing electric cars that are SUVs that you can put together and rent them in different configurations. Like if you need to move a refrigerator, you get the flatbed. Right. You need to take people, you get the people mover. Because the millennials want to rent, they don't want to own.
Right. So they're building these electrical vehicles where they have different components on it, and it could be both a home and a truck, right? You could actually run your business. It's connected to the internet. It's got Wi-Fi built into it. It can take any weather, like it could take extreme weather. It has many capabilities. And these units, I mean, with one 8-hour charge, you get nearly 400 miles, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah. So millennials are going to be moving to that mobile homes, but smart mobile homes that are built into the vehicle itself, that are different components to the vehicle, right?
It's really interesting you're saying that, because recently we were vetted for getting our own crypto coin. And the guy who was doing it, works for this company that's got millions of dollars from investors. He lives in an Airstream. So obviously they're moving to, people of his age are moving towards that kind of mobility. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, because look, after COVID, you think people are going back to an office, to a job, getting on the LIRR, traveling 2 hours to go to an office, when you could do everything and anything that you normally do in the office at home, which you've been doing for a good year now?
I knew this was going to happen the minute that the lockdown started. I might have jumped the gun, but I said, well, New York's over, because all the reasons for New York, no travel, no museums, no theater.
Right.
I mean, and people are saying, well, it'll come back. Maybe it will, but I don't know.
It's going to come back, but not to the pre-COVID levels in all of those departments and all those areas and all those sectors. It's not coming back. And the fact of the matter is that we've seen that there was more activity happening outside the cities, right, during COVID, in terms of, people got more local based, they got more local conscious. They were working from home. Look, there's no going back after this. There's just no going back. Look, what did we learn from World War I? The pre-World War I era, that worldview, could they go back? Could they just go back to, right? Could they do that after World War II? Certainly not.
No, not at all. Right? Not at all. When they had geared up, they were turning out airplanes by the hour. Right.
That's right. And so, when you look at the fact that the world was so drastically transformed over that, 5-year period, right, from 39 to 45, there was that world, right? There was you couldn't go back. The world changed dramatically, especially if you lived in Europe, you lived in Asia, if you lived in the countries that were directly impacted. And I mean, but then, before there was just, England ruled the world, and now England was a dustbin of history. I mean, it never recovered, right? There's a lot of things that changed, right? lifestyles changed, expectations changed. And what happened then is happening now. We're not going back to the pre-COVID era. And
no, I don't think so.
No, in any of the business models and the way to make it in the world and the way to establish yourself or the way to meet somebody or the way to make it in business or where to put your money or how to make a fortune or how to invest, right? The question is, what was the pre-COVID world in terms of how you made money, the stock market? How did you make it after the post-COVID era? Was through crypto, right? How did you make it in the world where you had to move to a big city and play the game and work your way up and work 2 years at another company and then another company across the street in a bigger, better building? That's all gone. So how do you actually meet somebody, right? How will young people who are single and available, even forget young people, anybody who is single, available, and want a relationship, how are you going to meet someone? So you think it's all going to go back? We're all just going to meet up. Like we're going to go to these meetups again. It's not going to happen that way.
No, and a lot of people are meeting online and it's working out. They're getting married and all kinds of stuff's going on. Well, you know, it's like here we are, we're having a conversation. Before COVID, what we're doing, Zoom would have been weird. It would have been Skype. It would have been cutting out. Since Zoom, and I know it's owned by China and all this other stuff, but now I feel like I'm in the room with you. So
exactly.
So I think people can meet this way.
And we have a community of people who keep coming back over and over again, and they get, you know, they're probably rolling their eyes every time, but getting some entertainment value at least out of it. So I'm sure we have two groups that are like, what are these guys going to say next? And then we have another half going, oh God, let's see what they're going to say.
Well, I think some people get scared. I mean, the reason I guess I get scared too, but I always feel like I've been through so much, I can go through more stuff. I think people, this pandemic of fear, if you're still standing now, you can deal with a whole lot of stuff. But you're right, there's no going back. You can't.
There's no going back.
Innovate or die. Saturn-Uranus, innovate or die.
Right, innovate or die. And the other thing with the Saturn-Uranus is sort of like this cancel culture and this tech clampdown.
Yes.
Right, that occurred during. So there's no going back to trusting. Right. I mean, I know people trust Joe Biden, so they so claim to be, but do they really trust Google? Do they trust if their vote is really being counted anymore? Look what's happened during COVID. If you look at everything, right, with the tech clampdown, the cancel culture has now become a national, it's a campaign. It's a campaign narrative. So there's no going back to trusting the information anymore, although a lot of people still trust and believe that the stock market really determines the way the economy is, which is, you know, so that's a false narrative, but definitely there's no going back. And the fact that we look at the security issues, like, is your phone really safe if you put your Bitcoin wallet on it? It's not. Right?
Yeah, you got to have a YubiKey.
You better have a YubiKey, and what else?
What's the two-factor authorization?
Yeah, so two-factor authentication or a YubiKey, right, is absolutely necessary, along with a VPN. If you don't have those two things, right, a VPN, two-factor authentication, or a YubiKey, which is the same thing, but it's a physical hardware version of two-factor authentication, you will, everyone listening to me, between now and 2025, you will be hacked. You will be hacked. That's my prediction.
Especially if you're in a city. If you're in a city, especially.
Well, here's the thing I was thinking. If everybody's announcing and everyone, even Wall Street's coming to the consensus that Bitcoin will be the most scarce global asset value on the planet between now and 2024 when the halving commences, what are all the hackers going to do worldwide? They're going to drop whatever they're doing and focus totally on going after wallets. And folks, they're coming after your wallet.
I've got a lot of YubiKeys.
Got to have those YubiKeys. You got to make sure you got to make sure on your phone that you have the NordVPN or any type of VPN on there active. All right. If you're going to look at something on side of Coinbase, if you're going to go into an email and check if, you know, you got your email from, you know, let's say you purchased something on Coinbase or some other account, and then the email goes into your account, you better make sure that you have a secure email, because the hackers are they can easily go into Google, they can easily go into all of these different, you know, Hotmail and all these other types of public mail, non-secure, and they can say, oh, he's got a Bitcoin account, she's got a Bitcoin account. Okay, we're going to start tracking them. We're going to find out where they are, where they go, what their IPs are. We will get their money. That is the gray rhino that nobody's talking about. And who's funding a lot of these hackers? Russia, China. They're funding the hackers. These Eastern European hackers actually have very sophisticated equipment that's being paid for by other governments where they have back-end deals with. That's another revelation that's going to come out.
Well, yeah, because they cut them in.
Exactly. Because they want the money. They want the Bitcoin because they have a plan. And so, you know, the fact that national government is saying, okay, Biden, the great Biden, the greatest leader since Obama, I've been told by many astrologers out there, right? Hint. So, you know, the United States needs to actually lead and make sure that we have certain safeguards put in here, because if the crypto market gets disrupted, it will take down all the markets. Right.
Well, also, that's one of the things that is preventing widespread adoption, is people are afraid of getting hacked.
Well, you know, this is all preventable. I mean, if you're going to be a single person and decide to have sex within 3 weeks of dating someone until you figure out it's not going to work for you, aren't you going to use protection?
Let's hope so.
I know in the 60s, that didn't even, like, nobody thought about that, right?
Right.
That was
summer of love, man.
Summer of love, right? So if you're not using a prophylactic, right, a condom, right, that's the same thing, right? If you're doing that today with AIDS and all these others, like now, 26 different STDs out there, and you're not using it's the same thing. It's the same equivalent, not using a YubiKey and also using ransomware. You have to make sure you have ransomware, an anti-ransomware inside of your computer, and along with the VPN. So you have to have a VPN, anti-ransomware, antivirus, anti-malware, along with a YubiKey or double authentication, or you will be hacked, or you will get like an STD. With getting an STD in today's world is equivalent to being hacked, and it's imminent and inevitable if you don't protect yourself. And a lot of people just say, well, they give me all sorts of excuses why they can't do this, right? They give me all sorts of excuses. And then I said, at some point you're going to run into trouble. And when you do, there's nobody to call. Who are you going to call? I want my money. It's gone. It's gone.
Yeah, it's gone to Russia.
Right. So this gray rhino, it's going back. William, what's this have to do, right? Monte, what's this have to do? This is all the gray rhino.
Well, because the future is here, and the COVID jump-started the future. And so problems that would have worked themselves out maybe kind of a little bit over a 7-year period got jammed to the front in a year.
Compressed into 7 months, 7 years to 7 months now, right?
Right. Well, it's just talking about the vaccine. This Dr. David McCullough from Texas, he was saying before a pregnant woman is what used to be given any kind of a vaccine, it would go through tests for over 10 years. And now they're giving, they're giving pregnant women this jab. And then at the same time, like kids who are 12 years old in North Carolina can now decide to get the vaccine without their parents' knowledge. Meanwhile, they can't be in the army, they can't drink, they can't have sex, but they do. And they can't, they can't do all kinds of stuff. But for some reason, North Carolina thinks they should be able. It's just a crazy, crazy time that I don't understand what's going on.
Well, there is a narrative. Their narrative, look, they've got a plan. We're not totally privy to this plan, but the writing's on the wall and it's all hidden in plain sight. So, look, we're going to find out more about what this is going to be about. And you got to realize that the biggest issue, is that half of the country, maybe more in terms of percentage, totally buys into the mainstream now. They still believe whatever comes on the New York Times is true.
Oh yeah,
the Wall Street Journal says is true. I have friends who know how much crypto I have, knows I was doing crypto for a long time, right? They don't know the exact number, but they have an idea, and still tell me on the phone, you really need to sell all of that stuff now. Excuse me. You need to sell.
It's going to zero?
It's going to zero. All right. Meanwhile, they have taken massive setbacks in their life in 2001, 2008, and in March last year. And I'm like, they haven't totally recovered. right? They still have some money. They have money, but they haven't totally recovered from those setbacks. And yet they're the same people that believe the FDA, that believe everything. They were the first ones to get the COVID vaccination without, seeing what's happening, right? So, and I know for a fact that at least, there's lots of people in the GTA group and the global transformation astrology group and the crypto group, right? That get back to me and saying, I have family members, I have siblings, I have a spouse, I have, 90%, most of my friends totally still believe in the same. Whoop, did you hear that? I just heard that. Yeah.
Well,
totally buy in, right? Totally consistent. In other words, they're still living the pre-COVID worldview, right? In fact, forget the pre-COVID 2019, they're still in 1999. And look, it's not just the astrologers out there. It's not just the
for sure.
woke astrologers, right?
Well, people are frightened. It's the fear pandemic. They're trying to hold on to something that will make them feel like things aren't spinning out of control.
Right. So what I'm getting at is that, people who know me personally say, yeah, you had a lucky run. You got it right. Had nothing to do with your astrology, right?
Whoa.
Yeah. So you have to understand that. And I've had astrologists tell me that as well. All right. So what I'm getting at here is that the cognitive dissonance, as it increases the propensity and the high level impact and the intensity of disruption that a gray rhino event or set of events, right, or a herd of rhinos, as you say, right,
yeah,
is likely to occur, especially this year.
Yes. Well, I'm telling you, and it's all spirituality and ancient texts all predict this stuff. Like you were talking about crypto being vulnerable to theft. The book of Tao says great wealth invites theft. I mean, there it is. And it's in leadership, the book of Tao says one who would lead must follow all. Do we have leaders who are following us, or do we have leaders who are trying to herd us into cattle cars to send us to Auschwitz? I don't know sometimes. Sometimes I just don't know. I think there is a chance that the eclipse and the Saturn-Uranus square could lead to a lion lying down with the lamb kind of a scenario. And right. Like you said, and that the summer of love, if people got into their spiritual head, could lead us into a new world order that's a good new world order instead of one where it's all about population control. That's what it seems to be. It's about population control.
Right. We'll do the thinking for you.
Right. Which is the patriarchy, which I don't understand why women go along with this.
Yeah, I know. They're actually disempowering themselves. They're actually reversing everything that they've worked to achieve.
My body, my choice. And then all of a sudden it's people like, you got to get jabbed, or you got to do this, you got to do that. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Americans with Disabilities Act prohibits people from asking you about your health. It prohibits people from being denied access to anything, but based on their physical situation. And now they're talking about COVID passports like Israel. And, Israel, the chickens are coming home to roost for Israel in a lot of ways, because they locked down their whole population with some draconian stuff. I think one of the things that's happening is karma is accelerated. People are getting their karma a lot faster.
Instant karma is going to get you.
We're back in the 60s right then.
That's right. John Lennon was right after all.
Yes, he was. You're right. Imagine a world without whatever.
Right. Right.
I'm glad we have these conversations. I wish there was more stuff we could tell people, what to do.
Well, look, the what to do is realize if you go woke, you go broke. Right? I mean, let's face it.
Bumper sticker, t-shirt.
Right. If you go woke, ultimately in the end, you will go broke. And once you go broke, you have no power. You don't have any political power, economic power. Let me tell you, what's the most disruptive things that break up families and marriages, that causes people to be dislocated or relocated?
Usually money.
Money. It's the money, honey. More money, more honey, right?
Yeah.
You know that, right?
No,
that's
it's
part
true.
of the operating system.
That's what broke up my parents, among other things. I mean, if you, the first rule of warfare is make your base secure, and to make a secure base, you have to have money.
Right. So you go woke, the more woke your friends, family members, spouse, whatever, right, go woke, the more likely, the higher propensity they will go broke, and they will start going broke in a much, much faster way, slowly and then suddenly, especially when the gray rhinos make their appearances. And it's coming. It's coming.
But what do you
soon.
mean? What do you mean by go woke, go broke? I know it's obvious to you, but I'm not sure I understand exactly what you mean.
Well, basically, where entrepreneurship, independent thinking, all the factors that set libertarian capitalism, right, or price discovery, everything. Wokeism goes contrary to all those things, right? What actually, do you think we could have become the greatest superpower in the history of the world between 1776 and 1945, when we officially hit the title, right? If we were a woke nation?
But I'm not sure I understand what you mean by woke. I mean, I think we should have eliminated slavery. That would have been woke, and I think that would have been a good thing. I mean, there's some aspects of woke that's what I'm trying to understand precisely what you mean by.
Well, the idea really comes from like this concern of social and racial justice that becomes the predominant way in terms of how policies and decisions are made, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so it's basically a form of socialism, radical socialism, that becomes a one-stop, one-size-fits-all approach to policy, to finance, to governance, to social hierarchy. Yeah.
So it's like Animal Farm, where some animals are more equal than other animals.
Bingo.
Yeah,
there
because
you go.
I mean, it always comes back to human nature, because what are the revolutionaries? They want to be the people in power. It's to say hello to the new boss, just like the old boss, like the Who's saying.
Right, but we didn't see that type of extreme thing happen, right? It's only been recently, like woke capitalism, right? So this woke capital, it's not just woke culture or cancel culture. Cancel culture is a shadow, is a derivative of woke culture, right? So
I see. Okay.
Here's another, like a person who is woke is aware of sexism, classism, and other forms of prejudice, and isn't going to turn a blind eye when they see it. So that's sort of like what they say about it. But what I'm saying is in terms of business and marketing, right? In terms of that, it's like virtue signaling when companies do virtue signaling.
I'm not a big fan of that.
Right. Well, right. So in order to maintain their influence in society, right? So like going back on their branding is more about virtual signaling, right?
No, yeah, that's bullshit. Excuse my language, but
yeah. So, and it's basically the type of campaigns that appeal to millennials who hold a much more radically social liberal view than the earlier generation, but they're the ones that are suffering the most in terms of being broke than any generation at the same time.
Oh, so that's what you okay.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, so yes, maybe I should, put together a little mini article or essay on, go woke, go broke. What does that really mean?
Yes. I think you should, because, there are aspects of being woke that are good. If I'm telling you, if I was a person of color, I would be pissed off and I would not want to wait. And I see things in the news. There are some people that are just saying, we're not going to wait any longer. And,
right.
And I can certainly understand. I would be like that. I'm a, 3 planets in Aquarius, forget it.
Right. So what's happened really with the Saturn-Uranus when it became exact in February is that the, woke evolved from being socially aware to being a social justice warrior with radical socialist solutions. So right. So before it was just sort of this awareness of sexism and stuff like that, which I don't think all forms of prejudice, which I think most people don't have an issue with, but it was the radicalization of woke, right? Where you went from, awareness to this radical social justice warrior.
Right. You're canceling people who don't live up to what you think is they should be saying or doing.
Correct. Correct.
Right.
And
So,
right. So
it's like ultimate activism, busybody, pains in the ass.
right. Right. So we're going to see a lot more of this. We're going to see more of the go woke, go broke, the consequences of going woke. Right. We're going to see the downside, the shadow, let's say the shadow side of wokeism is going to express itself most poignantly when we get into this eclipse and those gray rhinos are unleashed.
Yeah. Well, do you consider woke like when Elon Musk was saying, well, you can't use Bitcoin because the mining takes a lot of electricity?
Correct. That was a woke strategy, right? To neutralize and stop Bitcoin, because Bitcoin was on the verge of, Bitcoin was actually tied with the total market capitalization of silver, right? Which is 1.2 trillion, right? So all the silver in the world, if you put it all together, right, into one vault and you counted it all up, it would be worth 1.2 trillion on the planet, right, on the world. So Bitcoin reached parity with silver just before, right, Elon Musk and, there was a coordinated attack, this coordinated woke attack on it, right? So saying, well, this is not environmental, it's against the environment. It goes against climate change and all that type of stuff, which all of that was completely baseless, by the way. Right.
Well, of course, and most of it's hydroelectric, especially in China. But China had already told people not to mine.
Well, they already moved all of that out. Like those specific sectors of China, those prefectures where they were using coal to mine that Bitcoin, was that they already moved out of there months ago. So this was all a coordinated attack. This was a coordinated attack to slow down or stop Bitcoin from achieving global dominance. In other words, it was on the verge of going from 1 trillion to 2 trillion, equaling Apple in total market capitalization. And then once it hit 2 trillion, it would be on its way to going to 12 trillion, which would be the total market capitalization of all the gold on the planet. Once it hit that point, it would be the most powerful, biggest, strongest global asset on the planet. And then once it hit that level, it would then start going after all the physical money in the world, all of the derivatives, all of the bonds, right? So in other words, eventually Bitcoin would be worth more than all the money, all the bonds, all the gold, all the companies, everything that has value on the market combined. And
well, the governments would definitely jump in. But when you start to think about why he did it, I'm sure someone smart like him is doing it because he wants to get the price down so he can get more of it.
Well, exactly. I mean, he didn't sell any of it, right?
No, he did not.
It was a coordinated strike. No asset has been under this level of assault on a global scale all at once within a few short days in the history of the world. What is that telling you? It's telling you that a paradigm shift is underway. They are worried. The central banks, the governments, and Wall Street knows they are on the verge of an existential crisis. They are Great Britain. They are Great Britain in 1940 when they were absolutely losing the empire in the war to the Nazis. Everybody knew what was happening here. And if the U.S. didn't enter and intervene, it would have been over with for them, right?
Sure.
We all know that. And some Brits listening to this may disagree with me, but I have the compelling evidence. And they worried. That's why they were shipping everyone over to Canada and the U.S. Everybody, right? They had a contingency plan in case the UK gets overrun.
Well, yeah, they were only across the channel from France.
Exactly. And at that point, Hitler is unstoppable. Everybody knew it because they were all begging secretly for the U.S. to get involved to save the day. And that is just a fact, folks. Whether you want to, I know it's very unwoke to talk like this, but that's exactly where Wall Street and governments around the world, including the CCP, which has more at stake to lose than even the U.S. if Bitcoin continues to gain traction, because their crypto yuan, which is planned to overtake the U.S. world reserve currency. That's part of the plan between now and 2025. They even tell you this. And Kamala Harris in the World Economic Forum, which she'll be a keynote speaker, is planning to make that part of the transition, right? They know Bitcoin is the greatest disruptor to the oligarchical elite that basically want to set a one world governance using these types of Fed coins as the only means of trade settlement.
Well, I think what you've just done is pull back the curtain on another giant gray rhino, because these people didn't get rich and powerful by being stupid. And what they're trying to do now, I would guess, based on my knowledge of people, which is just my knowledge of myself, they're trying to figure out a way to control it. And the way to control it is to buy it. And the way to buy it is to get the price down. And the way to get the price down is what they're doing, so that when Bitcoin does do all the things that you're talking about, they'll own it. They'll be the Bitcoin owners. And right now they have the money to do it. I mean,
yeah, what's interesting is the whales have not sold. Like all the people who have had Bitcoin prior to 2017 did not sell. The only people that really sold their Bitcoin with all of these proclamations,
the leverage people.
Right. The leverage people. And you know where a majority of them were? In Asia, particularly South Korea. So the average 38-year-old single male in South Korea that makes somewhere between 100 and 200,000 a year were leveraged 100-fold, because their rules, they don't have to have the level of collateral like you do if you're on Coinbase Pro or in the United States or in Europe. So they can do extreme things. They were the ones that actually got nailed with massive margin calls when they started selling, and it just got worse and worse. So look, the only people the weak hands were basically people who got into it after 217 when the Bitcoin run up started happening, and were very new to it, right? And were using massive leverage.
Well, could you explain leverage? I mean, leverage means that they use what they have as collateral and they borrow, and then if it goes down, they have to pay. That's what leverage is. Right. And so what happens? It went down, and all of a sudden they had to go into their piggy bank and pay off this stuff.
Correct. So you actually make a bet on something with money you don't have. So you not only bet on the price, but you bet on the future price. So you borrow money, right, based on that future price, because you believe it's going to go up, right? Right. And when it works great. You actually make far more money than if you just naturally invest it. Right.
Yeah, but one of the most interesting things about it is on your Facebook group, somebody posted a screenshot of a phone from someone that they knew who was a trader in I think in Asia, like you said. And they said on that thing, and I don't know if it's been taken off or what, they said that at midnight GT, universal time, universal time, there was going to be a concerted effort to get the price of Bitcoin down to 30,000 because they were trying to wipe somebody out. And it happened. It was posted before it happened, and it happened. It went down to 30,000 for like what, 20 minutes?
Right.
And that probably put out a margin call like crazy on a lot of people, and they probably destroyed them, which reveals that it can be manipulated. It can be.
Yeah. So we're seeing like Great Rhinos show that there's a problem with manipulation, because these exchanges, like the rules don't apply. The rules for American exchanges don't apply to Asian exchanges. And so there needs to be consensus on trading, which is what we don't have right now. Right. So people,
that's important.
Yeah. So the crypto market is not perfect, and there's lots of risk, right? So I'm not saying everybody, hey, this is perfect, but if and the only coin out there that has made money, the only coin is Bitcoin, right? So, I mean, if you want to play it safe and be smart, right, there's a way to do that. And if you're in it for the long game, it won't matter, right? So actually, I think what's happened is going to catapult Bitcoin past $80,000 between now and the end of the summer. I believe the bottom line is that this actually worked out because all the weak hands got in, and now you have Ray Dalio, the largest hedge fund.
That's true.
Right, manager in the world,
and he hated it.
He hated it until a few days ago, and now he's in it. He said, "What? I trust Bitcoin more than I trust bonds."
And he is the bond expert.
Right, and the bond market is far bigger than the stock market.
Much bigger.
Much bigger. So that's telling you that a paradigm shift is underway.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, look at the reversal on oh my God, Goldman Sachs. They've also had a reversal. Now they're acting like they're the big experts, and they're new to the game.
Right. Yeah, and they're telling us now, don't invest in Bitcoin, invest in Ethereum or something else, right? Like, oh wow, right? For 12 years this was a Ponzi scheme, and now, right, overnight you're experts.
Now it's our Ponzi scheme.
Right. Now they're sounding like the astrologers for years, for decades, were telling me they didn't know anything about it, didn't know what it was, or it's a Ponzi scheme, right? And now they're coming out with reports out there, and they're charging, you know, hundreds of dollars for these reports and
Oh,
how to trade Bitcoin. You know, how to trade it, not just what to buy. They'll give you the trades. They're so good at this. They're going to give you the trades, right?
Yeah, but you don't want to trade stuff fast because of capital gains, and people act like it's not unregulated. You have to pay taxes.
Right. You're going to pay taxes every time you sell, right?
Exactly.
So, yeah. So what I'm getting at is like everybody's like a crypto expert now, even the sun sign astrologers. So,
well, you were getting crypto when you had to go through hoops to get it.
Yeah, I had to go to crypto when I had to go to the dark web to buy the crypto at the time.
Jesus.
So, you know,
man.
You had to have a certain level of IT expertise to know how to do that, right? Not that it required a tremendous amount, but you had to have enough savvy to know, okay, I need to get this type of browser. I need to make sure, you know, if I'm on the dark web, I have to have, at the time I had a physical, not a software-based VPN, but a hardware-based firewall at the time, right?
Wow.
So I was using, because I was in the IT industry, right? I was using it, right? So I was able to do all of that and get my crypto and all that. But what I'm getting at here is that a lot of people don't understand the technology, and like I'm not convinced that Goldman really understands the technology as much as they claim. Because when I read their report, I'm just rolling my eyes just as much as I rolled my eyes when I read somebody saying, you know, they're going to tell you how to trade crypto using astrology when there's just not enough data, folks. We don't have all the data yet. Every planetary combination that can occur over a period of 30 years, right? It takes generally 30 years, or actually longer. It takes about an 84-year period before we know really most of the combinations of the 780 combinations that can occur.
That's the Uranus cycle.
Right. So we don't even have all the data. That's why I tell people, look, we're doing the best we can do. The computers, because we get the data, we keep updating it, we keep black boxing it. The artificial intelligence shapes, you know, the constantly modifies the values and then makes projections, but we don't know enough yet. And yet you have sun sign astrologers telling us how it's going to be while they wear a bikini on YouTube. So look, this is
TikTok. On TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok. That's right. The TikTok astrologers are taking over. So, you know, this is the issue here. It's like, forget about it. Maybe they're better astrologers than me or you, but here's the thing. They are claiming to have expertise on this without having the data. And I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to say everyone, but most of them don't have the type of software I'm using, right?
Oh, I doubt that. You mean Alfie Lavoie software? I doubt that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. You know, and so look, what I'm getting at here is that we're going to see a lot of things get exposed with this eclipse. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
The other thing we need to talk about is this UFO thing.
Okay. Let's talk about the fact that was exposed was that the same old government bullshit, that they're not going to really tell the truth. I mean, I think I've told you this before previously. I saw one when I was in the Civil Air Patrol and was a trained observer of contrails, and I saw it make a right angle. And the person who was with me went on to become a Navy carrier pilot and a pilot in the airlines. We saw what we saw. So we knew it exists. That technology existed in 1966.
Right. But supposedly now it's the Russians and Chinese who had it back then, right?
Oh, I don't think so.
Well, that's what they're saying now. That's what the report has yet to come out. They're saying, well, so basically what they're getting at now is they're retracting, they're backpedaling. So we had a discussion about this yesterday, and we agreed that if Trump was still in power, not to extol Trump, right? He certainly was a flawed president in many ways.
Oh, for sure. And he let me down tremendously, if you ask me.
Right. But that being said, if Trump was still in power, when he was the one who invoked the executive order and included it into the COVID spending bill on December 27th, right? We would have a much different report today than what we're going to get in a few days from now with Biden in power, which is basically playing the Obama playbook. When Obama officially announced there is no evidence that extraterrestrials are here on Earth, or that any military vehicles or have encountered extraterrestrial. I remember this is an exact executive order statement. I'll post it on my Facebook. I'll post it today in the different groups so people can see the official letter with his signature on it. So they're playing the Obama playbook on this?
Well, most people are religious. This would go against everything in people's religion. They don't want to have riots in the streets. It always comes back to riots in the streets.
They're going to have riots in the streets real soon with the inflation levels and the fact that we're going to have the moratoriums lifted and the fact that we are seeing massive disruptions in the repo markets and reverse repo markets. People don't even understand what that is, right?
That's the money that the banks lend themselves.
In order to keep the liquidity going overnight, right? This happens 24/7, especially overnight. Without that, the whole entire system crashes, and they are in a crisis right now. So we're going to have riots regardless. And the powers that be got to know we got to get this reset going soon, right? And if we would have this information come out that these are vehicles that are not made of this world, that have greater military capabilities, that are able to operate with impunity in our military and national airspace on a global scale, and probably are doing other things as well, right, that are inferred from those statements, that would be extremely disruptive and revolutionary. Now, here's the thing. With this eclipse coming up and this Rhino event concept, right, can they really state nothing to see here, folks, move on, and get away with it this time?
I don't think so. I think that's the information about the information shows that they can't be trusted. And I think everyone's in that head of they can't be trusted. So if they had said something, even just something about but they're not saying anything. They're just saying it's all anomaly. They cannot say it is earthly technology, because earthly technology cannot do anything near what has been shown to have occurred with those military infrareds.
Right. So what they're saying now is that the Pentagon's basically punchline is we don't think it's aliens, but it's not Americans, meaning it's not secret American technology.
That's even worse than anything.
Right. Exactly.
That's the worst possible news. I'd rather have aliens. At least they have some brains.
Right. So they're saying now that Americans should spend untold trillions, not even billions. They're saying trillions of dollars to figure out how to make 90-degree turns at Mach 15, not Mach 5, Mach 15, and disappear into the ocean and reemerge out of the ocean and be able to disable nuclear installations and nuclear weapon systems instantly, right? In other words, whoever has this capability has been doing this. The military admits to this.
I saw it.
Right. But they're saying, well, it's not American, but it's not alien. So who is it?
Well, I don't know. It's not me. I'll tell you that. I didn't go home and say, hey, I'm going to build one of those. That was pretty cool. No, I mean, I saw it make a right turn in 1966 when I was 16.
Right.
And so you can imagine. But, if you read the Zechariah Sitchin work, I know I've beat that horse a lot, but I knew him and we had conversations and I traveled with him. It's an explanation for what's going on, that our DNA is mixed with theirs. They've been here the whole time. That's only one race we're talking about from one planet,
right?
Nibiru and all that kind of stuff. But it might also explain why there's this push for one world government, because some of the bad, quote, gods with a small g, some of these people, that's what they wanted. They wanted to control the whole earth. And they were willing to take a big population reduction. The story of Noah is from that time when the planet of the crossing, Nibiru, came close enough to Earth to cause the flood. And they knew it was going to happen. And the two brothers, the good one, everyone's like, why does God sometimes say great stuff in the Bible? And half the time he's ready to destroy everybody. Well, according to Sitchin, there were two brothers who ran the place. And the good one told Noah what was going on, and the bad one, who was actually in charge, he was like, let's all go up to our space stations and let the earth be reduced. These people make too much noise. They're lawnmowers, they're leaf blowers. I can't take it anymore.
Exactly.
Let them all die.
Look, I mean, it's clear, right? There's enough archaeological evidence that they've been here. They may still be here.
They're here.
According to all of the declassified documents, the remote viewing team that worked for the CIA, that was sponsored by the CIA at Stanford Institute, right, where they were performing those experiments for intelligence gathering, actually did a formal session They did a formal session of where specific alien bases were. And there's one in Alaska, a very large one that the U.S. government was aware of. This was that they were aware there was an ongoing base there, and all the other areas of the world where these bases were. So the government knew in the 70s, in the mid to late 70s, I don't remember offhand exactly what the date was, but I have it in the, by the way, it's in the Global Transformation Astrology if you go into remote viewing. So it maps it out and lists out the places. So they're aware they are here, right? But the big problem now is the fact that you've got what? The USS Omaha with as many as 14 different UFOs swarming the ship. And these UFOs were USOs. So they were going in the water, out of the water instantly, right? They were using the world's best. Radar isn't the right term for the system. We're just going to call it radar. But these type of systems, and this was taken directly, right? They were recording this, right, with the sailors, you know, communicating and saying, "What the hell is this? We have no idea. We're completely surrounded." A U.S. warship was completely surrounded for hours, and we have this. This is all over YouTube. This would be considered, if this is something Russian or Chinese, then the United States is on the verge of an existential crisis equivalent to when the Roman Empire was completely sacked by Germanic tribes, right? That overran Rome, right?
Well, that's why we're lucky it's aliens, because they apparently don't want to destroy all of us.
Right. So if it was the Russians and Chinese, which they're now starting to allude to this, right? They're already saying, before the report comes out, just want to let you know, it's not aliens, it's not us, but we don't know who it is. Then who else can it be? And if that is the case, then we're in a state of an instant Cold War. We're going to have a Sputnik moment, right? But, you know, none of that's going to happen because we have a president who's totally clueless about what's happening here, right? You can't blame him because he's not medically capable of understanding what is really happening. And I bet he's not even getting briefed.
Well, that's possible. I mean, he's obviously done a lot better than a lot of people thought. A lot of people thought he wouldn't even make it across election day. So he's exceeded expectations on a lot of. Well,
they just asked him a question about UFOs. Did you see that? I posted it in YouTube.
No,
right?
I didn't.
Yeah, so he walks away. They asked him, by the way, Mr. President, what is? Do you have any comment about the upcoming UAP report to be released by the Inspector General to Congress? And he just smiled and he goes, and he just walked away. He just left.
Well, he's smart.
Actually see it.
That's a hot potato issue for sure.
Right.
I'm telling you, people who are religious, this is a very, very bad thing to think about UFOs.
If your religion depends on the fact that God is a white male with a beard, or looks like Buddha, or looks like Krishna, or looks like that looks like what do they call it? You know, it looks like a human being, right? You know, or looks like Jesus, right? Then you don't have a religion. If your religion is dependent on that, if your religion is dependent on the fact that aliens are not here, they don't exist, right? Then you don't have a religion. What else can I say at this point?
No, I know what you're saying, but you're an Aries, and you're what you're saying is right in terms of what you believe. But these people, you know, if you're the president of the United States, you got to look. Yes, you're right. There probably will be riots from the people being evicted from their homes. But ever since the French Revolution and before, the governments are always afraid of people rising up. Look what they did after January 6th, or before, the way they militarized the whole Capitol. People, they are super afraid of stuff like that because they know that if people have reached a certain point where they're willing to take a couple of bullets, they can overwhelm any military, unless you're using nuclear weapons or something like that. But the governments are afraid of people being really, really scared. And the pandemic has already made people so scared. I think they're afraid if they start talking about the truth of UFOs, a lot of people can't handle it. I think. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I think people can handle it. I think the only ones who are going to freak out, and it'll only be for a short time, will be the fundamentalist, right? And I mean, this even applies to Roman Catholics, right? there's some fundamentalist Roman Catholics out there. This is not just the born again Christians,
Oh no,
in
no.
Midland, in the middle of the Bible Belt of the U.S., right? First of all, like a majority of the world, the Buddhists won't have an issue with it, right? Most of the atheists in China, because the religion's not tolerated there, they're not going to have an issue with it. The Japanese, right, are not going to have an issue with it, even if they are religious, because Japanese, right?
Yeah, but I'm talking about the United States.
Well,
the United States is a very religious country.
The fact that the United States is holding it back, look, it's imminent and inevitable about the extraterrestrial presence on Earth, right? That's like whether they're physically based here but they're certainly permeating our skies, and it is a military issue. That information is going to come out. If it doesn't come out in the next few days, it's going to certainly happen between now and the end of this decade. So their religious leaders right now have to be planning something. The Pope has to be ready to say something. You know, if you're the head of, whatever church or religion, whoever's the quote unquote Pope of those major world religions, who's the leading rabbis and the leading imams, right? They have to have a proactive position on this, or their religions will not survive.
You're right. That makes a lot of sense.
And the transits, going back to the astrology, the transits are showing, when you see these massive transits all occurring, that created the type of crises we've been seeing that we're still in now, only augurs the high probability where we're going to see a certain segment of the population go through a existential crisis, not a physical existential crisis, but a existential crisis of belief, right? If their worldview will be completely shattered from this.
Especially with Neptune in Pisces and Jupiter going into Pisces.
Right. So that conjunction, right?
Yeah.
So look, and then you've got the disruptive element of what UFOs represent. Like
Uranus is UFOs.
Well, yeah. And then you've got Saturn, which is the government, which is the academics, which is the policymakers that are saying nothing here to see. We've been telling you this for 70 years, and we're just going to come out with a report that reinforces that position again. I'm going to tell you something. Uranus is not going to tolerate that. Uranus is going to say, no. This time, it's going to be different. And I know a lot of the UFO researchers are already saying, we've capitulated. Look, we're going, there's no need to look at this report. It's over. But what the astrology is saying with this eclipse and with the second Saturn-Uranus, and the fact that that report's going to be coming out pretty close to those two dates, right?
Yes, amazingly so.
Means to me something disruptive that no one can see coming. Even the astrologers, by the way.
No, right, I agree.
Is coming out from this report. Even if they say nothing to see here, folks. So there'll be something in that report that's going to light dynamite. Well, I don't know what it is.
There's an old expression that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come.
Right.
And I think that I mean, how many movies do they have to make about ETs before people understand that it's illogical and not scientific to think that we're the only human intelligent people in the universe? I don't mean human.
The only people that believe that are the fundamentalists.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I meet a lot of people, and you talk about UFOs. Once again, and we're back to fear, because a lot of people are afraid of saying a tenth of the stuff we say every time we get together and talk, because you're talking about wokeness, cancel culture. You're talking about people can't make jokes anymore because everyone's offended. I mean,
that's
they can make jokes.
Culture, by the way. Go ahead.
Yeah, because I'm actually one of the only people they can make fun of. A psychic tarot reading astrologer who's an old white guy. Bring it on, everybody. But who loses out in all these things? I just feel sorry for the young people, because if they grow up in this, they think this is all there is. They know that there's UFOs. They don't have to be told.
Right.
They understand. They're smart. The kids today, I think, are not getting enough credit for how smart they are. They're living in an 1890 school system, and it's 2021. So I think there's a lot of hope, even if the report doesn't say anything good about UFOs and doesn't admit it. I think we all know what's going on.
Right. And so, look, the fact that the Pentagon's already said they won't be alien unmasking or disclosure at all, they're going to just try and move the report away from that. I do think whatever is going to be in that report, and I'll read the report through and through, right? When it comes out, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of brilliant minds, much smarter than me, doing that as well, and talking about it. But I'm going to use, the mundane astrological lens, not the sun sign astrology lens. Sorry, I know it's inferior to, right? So, but right, because sun sign astrology is astrology. Everything else is secondary. The mundane astrology lens to it, right? And when we have that approach to it, look, it comes down to what we saw in 1518, right? Well, 1517, 1518, that period when the Barbell Cyclic Planetary Index dropped significantly. And I'm going to show that in the next GTA presentation that's coming up. So I'm going to show that. And what happened is when Martin Luther signed
nailed
and
the
posted
stuff to the door.
Right, 95 theses. He wanted to reform and change all the corruption in the Catholic Church, because the Catholic Church was the largest government institution in all of Christendom that was, that was all the way in Russia, all the way into the Middle East, Russia to the British Isles. In other words, it was vast. It was like, right, there may have been multiple kingdoms, but they all tithe to the Pope. In other words, the Pope was really like the president, right? He was like, he was like the Mao Zedong of the era, right? He was, right. So his word was from God, and it was to be enacted, right? So in other words, you had one big happy church, so to speak, that got corrupted, right? And he wanted to make that reform. But what happened, right? Not only did it set off a series of reforms, right? It actually caused a breakup of the entire church. We went from one church to what? Hundreds of churches. We went from little fiefdoms and feudal kingdoms, right, to large states, nation states. We went from no banks to a banking system. We went from little trading markets to global trade. We went from little, land masses to global exploration, right? So like we went from the feudal system, right, to the Renaissance. We took a big leap, right? The feudal system collapsed, then the Renaissance took over, right? You had the beginning of universities, you had the beginning of commerce, you had the beginning of what? The fundamentals of governance, not by kings,
papal,
not by papal decree, right?
Right.
That was right, or by kings who were subservient to papal decree, but the basic components of elected government began to commence within a short time of when he posted that. So the reason I'm bringing this all up is I believe what's going to come out is going to be equivalent. It won't be, right? So the massive amount of changes that happen, dramatic changes of tectonic changes that happen in Europe at that time, which we now call the Renaissance. We sort of all clump it in and call it the Renaissance, but it was really more than just that, is going to be equivalent, right, to what we're going to see with this report, because I think they have no idea that this is going to light off a massive geopolitical storm, and it's going to impact every sector over the next few years. So what happened on October 31st, 1517? Nothing and everything at the same time. Right. When John and Paul got together, July 6, 1957, what happened that day? Nothing.
You mean the Beatles?
Right. Nothing happened, right? If you look at rock and roll history, what happened? Nothing happened big that day, except those two guys got together and decided, right, to start a band. So what I'm getting at is so when the report comes out, nothing will happen and everything will start happening.
Well, we'll have a lot to talk about next time. That's for sure.
Well, it'll be like, people will say, William, I looked at the report and there's a few things here that could definitely get people pissed off and take action and make you realize that petroleum is not going to be the power source, because right now people believe petroleum is the only way you can power a civilization.
Well, according to Zechariah Sitchin and according to the Sumerians, their spaceships, their heavy lifters were all powered by water. So it's not surprising to me when that ship, the U.S. ship, reported that these UFOs kept going underwater, because they obviously have some way to negate gravity and the laws of physics, but they're probably going in there to pick up the water, to crack it into hydrogen and whatever. I tell you, man, it's an exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, I mean, I just think we're just touching the tip of the iceberg. So I think all of this is, I think, and they're going to be other great rhinos we can't even predict. I mean, unless you have privy to the national security briefing that Biden doesn't even read every morning, because he can't even get through it.
I do not.
Right. Unless you have that, you don't really know what other gray rhinos, right, are going to emerge. And then we have the big black swan that is likely to come at the end of November 2022 or early 2023, when the planetary cyclic index hits its trough point. It's 500 and some odd degree, 532 degree trough point, which is equivalent.
People don't know what the Barbo index is. It has to do with the planets being close to each other, the outer planets being close to each other, because, sorry to say, in sun sign astrology, the most powerful aspects are the conjunctions.
Right.
I don't mean sun sign astrology like, Aries works with Libra or Libra, stuff like that. No, but I'm talking about the conjunctions are so powerful. So the Barbo index makes perfect sense. And they're so close now and have been for a while.
Right. And they're getting closer and closer. And the graphical, what they, was, if you just take all the levels of separation and conjunction or closeness the planets have with each other, and you map that out on a graph, right? You put that all on a graph, you can go back in history and see every time the planets started going closer and closer, that's when the peanut butter hit the fan and massive seismic changes occurred. And now we're going to go under the biggest one since the collapse of the Roman Empire. And this report's coming out, and all these other things, we've been talking about, and the great rhinos and all these eclipses. So folks, this is not going to calm down. And the best action you can take is to be proactive.
Right. And like you said, if you're going to move and do everything you can to make yourself as strong and of course buy all my books and join your stuff and
that too, but also what I was going to say with that, to move, like if you're going to, either if you're thinking about innovating, well, should I spend that 20,000 to finally automate this process in my business or whatever? Now's the time to do it, because we either innovate or die.
Yeah. We actually went and did TikTok, and we got 200,000 views on TikTok. It's under Amy's name, Amy Zerner.
Right. Congratulations.
And the most commented thing was, we want to be adopted by you and Amy. So there's a lot of young people on there, and we are innovating. We got 4 new book deals, 3 books coming out now and this year. And our next innovation is we're going to have our own crypto coin out of rally.io is a place. And I think you should do this too, because you have your own ecosystem.
Right. NFT. It's an NFT coin.
Well,
non-fungible token.
They're very well funded by all the big angel investors out in Silicon Valley, and Rally is getting into the NFT. And I think that they have 4,000 people who have applied. We were shoved to the front of the line because I pointed out Amy has done over 1,000 collages.
Right.
So she is the mother lode of NFTs. So we will do this, but we are innovating. Saturn-Uranus is innovating the brave new world, the new world order. It can be a good thing. It's just that we have to apply spiritual principles to it.
Absolutely. So it's really a decentralization. So the problem is the powers that be are trying to centralize money and power, right? And influence through, centralized media. It's like, basically the 6 major media companies run and control everything, and Google Google and Facebook's included.
They don't control us though, do they?
No, they don't. But you're like the minority, right? So majority of people, look at your bubble, your bubble friends in the Hamptons, right?
Yes.
So bubble Hampton. So And that's not the only bubble, right? We got bubbles
No.
in Manhattan on the Upper West Side.
Yeah.
You've got bubbles in Silicon Valley. You've got bubbles in San Diego, in La Jolla. You got all these different bubbles. But those bubbles pop, and I believe the bubble popping, not just in terms of house prices, I think that's a physical manifestation of it, but in terms of the worldview, the mindset, the cognitive dissonance, all of that is going to be popping. And I believe one of the things that's going to pop their bubble is the ransomware attacks, which are closing schools, delaying chemotherapy, derailing everyday life, is when they get ransomwared, right? Because they didn't listen. They don't have a YubiKey. They don't have a VPN. They don't have anti-ransomware right on their phone.
Which brand do you recommend?
Well, there's a number. I don't want to recommend a brand. Well, okay. So the brand that I use, which serves multiple purposes, is is a software I use that actually backs up my system. That completely backs up my system. Okay. So Acronis True Image. So Acronis True Image does two things. It has anti-ransomware, right, monitor, and it will tell you, and it'll intercept it and kill it, and also backs up your entire operating system, every file, everything, the whole image in one shot off to the cloud, and encrypts it, right? And you have a certain C key that you need to keep, or you can use the YubiKey, by the way, right?
Oh, really?
To secure that. So in other words,
I do have an extra one.
Right. So what you do is, if your computer gets compromised, broken, stolen, whatever, right, you can rebuild the operating system within minutes, just connecting back to the internet with the new system. And then you go to Acronis Cloud, input your information, put in your C key, boom, probably within an hour or two, you'll have your whole computer back perfectly.
Well, and that's great.
It has ransomware. The best ransomware technology is built into Acronis True Image.
Thank you.
So you could use that.
No, I think that's wonderful. I hope people appreciate all that you do. I mean, you really are a warrior for truth. And I'm not just saying this because we do this. Before I even knew you, I thought you were just amazing. And what you're doing and helping people, as you being an Aries pioneer into the future and coming back and dragging us all with you, I really do appreciate it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, Monte. What I'm basically doing is what I've been doing for years for myself. And then people said, William, you've got to start a group. You got to say this to other people. And I was thinking, why? You go to why? You go to these metaphysical conferences, you don't hear anything like this. And I go, well, that's why you need to do it. Right. So
no, but they won't let you they won't invite you.
No, they won't. Right. So that tells you what's really going on here. We have woke astrology. Look, it's not just because of their radical social politics. It's because anyone who's committed to the truth, or at least seeing things for what they are in terms of what the data is showing, is not part of the woke agenda that has now taken hold of the entire not just astrology, the metaphysical world, not just in the United States. It's even worse in the UK.
I'm going crazy.
Worse. Yeah.
This is Farberology. This hat was given to me by my astrology students, so I just wanted to show everybody. So this isn't astrology. This is Farberology.
You are a Farberologist.
I'm a Farberologist, but I tell you, I think you got to get a hat for your guys, because we all have to be Stickevers.
Right. We got to come up with Yeah, we'll have to come up with a ologist.
Yeah, you guys don't have any merch. You got to get some merch going.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other day. We'll probably do that. I just finished doing my last set of one-off clients. So in other words, unless you're a retainer client with me, or you're a member of GTA or the Crypto Astrology Group, there's no way you're going to have access to me anymore. Because one of the big issues was, I realized that if I want to write a book and I want to do better presentations, I want to have better discussions, and I want to have a normal life where I can go to the gym and just do simple things, I can't be doing 5 readings a day. Even if I raise the prices up and up and up.
Well, you only have so much time.
So much time. So now, as of this week was my last set, all right, of doing that. And now I could be totally focused on these bigger issues. And, because look, ultimately in the end, it's great to do the one-off readings, but like if you get, I want my annual one-off reading, William, for the next 2 hours and tell me how it ought to turn out or how it's going to turn out, even though I'm not going to follow most of your advice because this is just entertainment for me. That's why I decided to switch over to the retainership, because my retainers do take action on the strategies that I provide them and the insights I provide them. And that's what I'm really all about. And then doing that with the Global Transformation Astrology group and the crypto group. And that's really what really drove me to do astrology, not trying to tell people how I can fix their intractable problems that they haven't really worked on for 30 years, right?
Well, that's really cool, man. I think we've done it again. We've had another one of these wild and crazy.
Yes.
I put in my Facebook thing, I said, we have a free exchange of ideas from people whose advice is not usually free.
That's right. That's right. A lot of this stuff, right, you're not going to hear out there, especially in the astrology world or the metaphysical world. You're not going to hear this because, in the end, that may be an episode we have to explore. Why has the metaphysical world completely abandoned reality?
Well, it's the same reason I invented quantum affirmations. I invented quantum affirmations because when something good happens, some shit happens that comes along with it. And when the metaphysical community, if you're doing, meditations or whatever, anything negative comes in, instead of saying, well, that's part of life, I'm going to handle it, they don't want to hear it. They think but
I want to get into, right, absolutely. You've defined it very well. But why is it now systemic, right? Why is it systemic? And why is it now we're seeing it in publications where, everything is from a woke angle? And these are the people that people go to when everything else is failing in their life. And then just given more of the same of what they could read in USA Today, right? I mean, and I'm not even talking about world issues. I'm talking about they don't provide action. They're certainly, it seems like to me, the woke astrology world is not committed to executing or providing actionable advice, actionable strategy, or getting to the fundamentals of why someone is in a situation like this that's been going on as a major theme for the past 20 years, that it's been robbing them of their happiness, of their sense of destiny, etc. They don't get to the fundamentals.
Well, that's because they don't have life experience.
Oh, you're saying so like the 22-year-olds to tell us how to trade Bitcoin every week on TikTok is not the solution?
In a bikini, of course.
In a bikini, right.
No, I mean, you have an IT background, you have a corporate background, you've lived, you've hung out with people of different kinds of areas, different races, different, the whole New York melting pot kind of stuff. I grew up in Brooklyn during the gang wars. I worked in the movie business. I was in the music business. I've been an astrologer for a long time. I do the publishing. I think when you have a life, right, and you and I have good relationships, I think when a lot of these people do not have life experience.
Right. I think that's the big one. I think the other issue is you have people now in leadership who've been doing this for like 30 years plus, right, who have completely like backed off from whatever they were and have been sort of like now part of this woke agenda. So I'm seeing this like from both ends of the spectrum, the people who've been in the industry for a long time and the people who are new to the industry who are now, personalities because they have 100,000 or 1 million TikTok viewers, right? So, I think that might be worth exploring more in depth, getting to the fundamentals in a future show. That's what I'm getting at.
I would love that. And I'm going to find out more. Someone's writing here saying the Kundalini community is different from the rest of the metaphysical community. I'm fascinated because Kundalini, as I know it, is the energy that goes along your spine. I didn't know there was a Kundalini community. Mm-hmm. They're sharing almost all the ideas shared in this podcast. Well, that's fabulous. Wow. Yeah, we didn't invent all this stuff. We're just commenting on what we see.
Right. Absolutely.
So that should be a next thing. If there is a next thing, if the aliens don't take over Zoom by the next time we do this.
If the aliens take over Zoom, it'll be a better quality Zoom experience.
That's true. It'll be holographic.
Right. It'll be holographic. It'll be in the metaverse. Right.
Love it.
So everybody out there, everyone out there, we have to remember that we are in the middle of a massive global transformation. And the key is not only to survive and thrive during this time, but to really stay informed, to be proactive, to go within and stay connected to your inner wisdom, your truth, whatever that might be. And most importantly, to take action, to take massive action on what you know, because when you know better, you do better. And that is the core and key of like what I think we're really trying to say today.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. Forewarned is forearmed. We did it.
It's coming. It's coming, folks. Yes, we did it.
Yeah,
well,
and happy eclipse to you and Saturn square.
And likewise. And everybody out there, all right, get ready for the gray rhino because it's coming. But look at it as an opportunity, because in every crisis, there are multiple, not just one, but multiple opportunities.
Yes.
And so I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and we'll see you all at the next Astrology Exchange.